Good morning, guys. I hope your day is starting off just fantastic. Breaking news for the federal election in Canada. New single released this week, Oops, I Did It Again, by Danielle Smith. Shown on the graph behind me here are the polling numbers over time, average of all polls in the province of Quebec. And as you can see on the chart here, the Liberals in red have surged straight up. The Conservatives in black have dropped down. The Bloc Québécois in blue has plummeted, and so has the NDP collapsed in Quebec. The Liberals are threatening to run away with the province of Quebec, which can single-handedly swing the results of this election. And I guess in the face of this, Danielle Smith, who I just did a video a little while ago, and I called that the biggest blunder so far in this election, where she appeared on a U.S. show, Breitbart. She was interviewed there and made some controversial comments. Controversial for some and not controversial for others. Let me just read the comments she made. On that show, she was criticized because she said this, and I'll read it so that I get it exactly what she says. Because of what we see as unjust and unfair tariffs, it actually causes an increase in support for the Liberals. So she understands that the issue between Canada and the United States, this trade war that's going on, and the escalation from the U.S. administration talking about annexing Canada and making Canada the 51st state, this issue, as she acknowledges, is increasing the support for the Liberals. And she's absolutely right. And that's why this graph looks like this. The Liberal turnaround happened precisely when Donald Trump started amplifying his rhetoric to make Canada the 51st state, and the threat of tariffs and the implementation of tariffs became the number one issue in Canada. She went on in that interview to say, I've told administration officials, let's just put things on pause so we can get through an election. And people accused her of election interference for making that remark. Not election interference for going on the show. Anyone can go on the show and talk, but election interference from her admitting that she talked to administration officials and urged them to put tariffs on pause because she was well aware that this was helping the Liberals in the election. This didn't go over very well, and she faced a lot of criticism. So I thought that maybe she would keep a low profile going forward, but no. She decided that she would appear on another show in the United States. This time she appeared with Ben Shapiro. Here she is posing for a nice picture with Ben Shapiro. They're both smiling. They had an excellent time. In fact, she is quoted as saying after this, I had a great time at the PragerU East Coast Gala tonight, where I joined Ben Shapiro for a meaningful fireside chat to discuss the ongoing Canada-US trade dispute and the benefit of having a tariff-free relationship between our two countries. Now, it is true that in this particular interview, she tried to stick to trade topics. She talked a lot about how the export of oil and gas was very important to the United States. But you got to remember that this Ben Shapiro guy has been, this is some of the stuff he said. He wrote in January that former Prime Minister Trudeau would be expelled to Panama to work on the canal after the U.S. took over Canada. And in December, he argued that Canadians would greet Americans as liberators. And he went on to ridicule Canada, saying, Canada is a silly country that makes maple syrup, hockey, and annoying prime ministers, and would be much better off being part of the United States. He's since said that he was kidding. And it begs the question, guys, that if she understands, and she does, because she said it herself, that this tension and this issue between Canada and the United States is leading to an increase in Liberal support, why would she keep the issue going in the media? Any type of association with the U.S. is a huge negative in this election campaign. Not so much in Alberta, but in Quebec, as you can see from the graph, a huge toxic issue which the Liberals don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Any association with Donald Trump or American politics or any talk about being aligned with the United States right now is a huge negative in this campaign. Yet Danielle Smith insists that she will not be silenced, Well, she showed up on a podcast with Ben Shapiro. And I know the reaction for people that support Danielle Smith or conservatives in general would be, well, so what? She can say whatever she wants and she can show up on any podcast she wants. That's free speech. And in fact, that's what Pierre Poilievre said when he was asked about it. Of course, he's going to get asked about it. He'd rather be talking about other things on the campaign trail. But he was asked, what do you think of Danielle Smith appearing on stage with Ben Shapiro? And of course, Pierre Poilievre had to say, well, she's allowed to do whatever she wants. She doesn't speak for me. He has to avoid the issue. And you have to understand that this is a campaign now, right? There's a federal election going on. There's parties trying to campaign. And there's a difference between campaigning and governing. And when there's a campaign going on, especially a federal campaign, you have to try and win over voters from all across the country. And Danielle Smith is not part of the federal election. She is not campaigning. She's not running in the federal election. She's the Premier of Alberta. There's no election going on in Alberta. There's no reason for her to even say anything or get involved at all. And she knows, because she said it herself, that this issue is toxic for the conservatives, and it seems to be helping the liberals. So why would she try to keep this issue in the forefront or in the news cycle? And as I predicted from the previous video, where she appeared on the Breitbart show and she made those comments, the result is not really going to affect potential voters in Alberta or Saskatchewan, but it's going to have a huge effect on voters in Ontario and Quebec. How is it going to have this effect? Because I'll show you now. If you live in Quebec or Ontario and you're watching television, every 30 minutes or so, you're going to see something like this.
Conservative Premier Danielle Smith said that Pierre Poilievre and Donald Trump are in sync.
The perspective that Pierre would bring would be very much in sync with, I think, where the new direction in America.
What part of Trump's vision is Pierre in sync with?
So you have to understand that this is a federal election campaign that's going on. It's only 4 weeks long, 4 weeks left in the campaign. And that kind of stuff is going to be used in ads like that. All right? And you can see from this composite of all the polls in Quebec, all it's done, the last little tick up here for the Liberals comes after Danielle Smith's appearance on the Breitbart show. Now, I'm not saying that uptick is solely responsible to Danielle Smith's actions, but she's certainly not helping the Conservatives to turn this around. And I'm going to give you a perspective here, because I know there's going to be some conservative supporters that are probably getting very upset by this point in the video and gritting their teeth and saying, well, getting angry. And I'm just going to explain this, okay? There was an election in Ontario just recently, and Doug Ford won that election in a landslide. Now, Doug Ford is a conservative, and he was running provincially in Ontario. How did he win that election in a landslide? He won that election in a landslide by being Captain Canada, all right? He campaigned completely and totally as the strong man that would fight against the United States. Not in sync, not working cooperatively with the Americans. He made speeches where he said things like, the Americans have stabbed us in the back. We were close friends and they just stabbed us in the back, and now we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to put Canada first. I will fight. I will turn off the electricity. I will never surrender. He gave basically a Winston Churchill I will never surrender speech every time he was quoted on the campaign trail. He understood which way the wind was blowing. He understood what the electorate was thinking, and he ran a flawless campaign, and he won in a landslide as a conservative in Ontario. So he was well aware of how to run a campaign. And remember what I said, campaigns and governing are completely different things, okay? You can have your ideology and you can have your priorities when you govern, but when you're campaigning, it's very important that you appeal to the voters that you don't already have. You don't have to appeal to the voters that are your base, that will vote for you, even if there was a flower pot running against the opposing side. Your core will vote for the flower pot to make your party win. You don't have to convince those voters or continue the rhetoric to keep your base happy. You have to win over some of the moderates and the swing voters, okay? Now, Doug Ford understood this, and he won in a landslide. Danielle Smith understands this. We know that she understands this because she said so on the Brett Bart show. She said this tariff issue with the United States is giving support to the Liberals, and we should put these tariffs on pause until after the election. She knows that this is a toxic issue, yet she persists in appearing with kind of right-wing American podcasters and keeping this issue in the limelight. Why is she doing that? And she's not stupid. You could say, well, she's stupid, but she's really helping the Liberals. And the Liberals are sitting back going, go, girl, go, Danielle. When's your next podcast? Because they're ecstatic that this is happening. And Pierre Poilievre is probably calling her going to just please shut up. I'm trying to run in a federal election here. She's not running in an election. She just likes to talk, I guess. But there are those who are now suggesting something more sinister. And is it possible that Danielle Smith is purposely trying to sabotage the Conservatives' chance of winning this election? She knows that her actions are having the effect. She knows this. She's admitted it, yet she keeps persisting. Is she trying to harm Pierre Poilievre's chance of winning the election? Because she knows in Quebec, and if we flip the graph here to Ontario, the two provinces that have the most voters and the most seats in Canada, there's Ontario. She knows that her actions are going to have the biggest effect in Ontario and Quebec. If Danielle Smith ran for provincial premier in Ontario or Quebec, she would come in last behind the Green Party. They hate her that much. I'm being very blunt here, okay? She knows this. She's very strong in Alberta. So why is she persisting and insisting that she will not be silenced? Is she fighting for Alberta? Or is she trying to sabotage Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives? And there are those now that are thinking, well, perhaps she's actually trying to sabotage Pierre Poilievre's chances because she would prefer to have a liberal federal government, because it's very popular in Alberta to fight with the federal government. She is a fighter. She likes confrontation, and she likes to always be fighting. She enjoys talking. She enjoys fighting. Is it possible that she would rather have a liberal government in power federally so that she can just continue to fight, continue to be the iron woman and the strong woman, and that would make her much more popular in Alberta? Is that possible? Because she has also started talking about, if the Liberals win, I can't guarantee that we may not have a unity crisis in Canada. Oh boy, if the Liberals win, there might be a unity crisis, and I can't predict how Albertans are going to react, and perhaps we may have to try and separate from Canada. Is that her plan? Because she has a staff of dozens of people that look at this polling and the public sentiment and how people will react to different. All these politicians have staff members that closely watch this stuff. Doug Ford had an excellent team that ensured his victory. And they told him what he could say, what he couldn't say, how he had to distance himself from American alignment, and how he had to portray himself as the fighter for Canada. And he won in a landslide. This is well known. Danielle Smith's handlers know this as well. Everyone knows this, yet she's behaving in the opposite way. And perhaps the only way of explaining it is that she has a more sinister plan. She may actually prefer if the Liberals were to win the federal election, so that she can continue with her rhetoric and her, fight, fight, fight. I'll never surrender. I'll fight Ottawa all the way. We might separate. It's sad. I don't know any other way of trying to explain it, because it can't just be, oops, I did it again. No one can be that stupid. It would shock me now if perhaps she'll set up another podcast appearance with Joe Rogan 2 weeks before the federal election. I wouldn't put it past her. I have no idea how to explain it, guys. There's no rhyme or reason from a political strategy point of view. And remember, we're in the middle of a federal election. okay, that she's not involved with. Doug Ford, who just won in a landslide, and he's a conservative, is taking a low-profile, low-key approach in this election. He said, I don't want to get involved in the federal election. I will work with whichever party forms the government to keep on, to promote Ontario's point of view. He's been very, very calculated and professional about it. He's a conservative, and he won. And I for the life of me, I can't explain it. I'm going to ask you guys, leave some comments in the comment section. What do you think? The question is Danielle Smith purposely trying to sabotage the chances for the Conservatives to win this federal election? That's the question I want to ask you guys. Leave it in the comment section. I'll read your comments. They should be interesting after this video. And I will catch you guys on the next one.